The Game Awards are around the corner, and while there are a multitude of guesses and predictions out there, Devon and I, my name is Ethan, hello, and that's Devon over there, have the actual answers. We know what is going to be at the Game
We're from
Awards.
the future.
We are from the future. However, we'd like to little play a joke on you, and we're both going to say answers for each of these. One of them is true, and if we both say the same thing, then you know it's true because I'm pretty sure that's got. We're probably going to predict the same thing
To
at
cover
least
our
once.
tracks, we should just say separately.
Oh,
Different
only
ones.
pick
Just the odds
shit. We
of
need to
us
have
being
backups.
correct.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these are like 5 options. That's a pretty good odd. 2 out of 5. We're gonna go bit by bit through every single nomination for the Game Awards, and we're gonna tell you who we think is going to win. So let's begin. Best esports game.
Yeah, so for best esports game, I'm obviously very biased, and I play. Honestly, Counter-Strike's the only game I really adamantly play to this day. For the last almost 10 years now. And part of me wants to say Counter-Strike too, but I think honestly, and I hate to say it because I'm a hater of this game. I hate this game, but I feel like a lot of people have been talking about it. Valorant. I hate this game, but I think it's gonna win just to spite me. That's my reason.
My answer is also Valorant. It came to consoles this summer, so a lot more
I
people
didn't
are
even
playing.
know that. Maybe that's
playing
why
it
I've been
now.
seeing a lot of conversation about it.
And I know the Riot Games heads, those kids are out there and they don't shut the fuck up about their favorite video games. They pit 2 of them against each other, but it is certainly going to Valorant.
All right, up next we have most anticipated game. The game that you're most anticipated for, or at least the gamer's most anticipated game that they're interested in. A weird award.
This is a
every
weird
year,
one. It's
but
basically who has the best trailer, and I think it's obvious which one is going to be. It's Grand Theft Auto 6. This is the game that the entire industry is waiting on to get the fuck out of the way of, and also there's the pension of like, oh, this is a game that will sell PlayStation 5s. We release a game after this, we're going to sell more copies because there'll be more PlayStation 5s. Easy.
100%. Yeah, this was like the guaranteed lock. Out of all the ones up after this, like this one's the guaranteed lock, 110%. If it's not Grand Theft Auto, something rigged happened. Like I'd be shocked.
I would guess if they don't say what the rest of the stats are, I would guess maybe Metroid might be second, maybe just because it's like, oh my god, they announced it 2017.
I would honestly I mean, they never like showcase the percentages of votes, but out of all the categories too, I feel like this one would be like 90% Grand Theft Auto. Everyone else doesn't matter. It's 10%.
It is guaranteed this has the majority of votes. Absolutely.
By a lot.
Absolutely.
By a lot.
Yes. All right. Next up, we have best adaptation.
Yeah. So I watched 2 things on here, including Knuckles, which we did a review on because, we're the Sonic movie show and we had to. I don't think Knuckles is going to win. I don't think it was really that good to even. I mean, to be fair, there's not many adaptations that come out, even though I know where video game movies and whatnot is starting to become more of a thing. There still isn't that many coming out to where, you're going to have a hard selection to do. So, like, I get why Knuckles is on here, but it's not going to be Knuckles. I keep seeing Like a Dragon on Amazon Prime or whatever. I've never watched it, but I'll say I watched Fallout only because everyone else I knew, like people who aren't even gamers necessarily, or at least like my dad even watched Fallout because he's like, oh yeah, I remember you guys talking about Fallout in 2010 or whatever, even he watched this. So I was like, fine, I'll watch this. And I wind up watching it and I was like, oh, that's actually pretty good. I get why a lot of people are excited about this. So I think Fallout has this because it's also up for, I believe, some Emmys there. Like I think they're up for like best costumes or something like that. I don't remember, but they're up for something and it's being well received. So I think Fallout honestly has a very strong chance of winning this.
But it has no chance, and neither does Knuckles. Knuckles was terrible. The answer is going to be Arcane, because those League of Legends kids don't shut up about that show, and it's got enough of the stuff that makes Tumblr and Twitter go apeshit in positive ways, not necessarily my thing, but in positive ways. And I remember this won a couple years ago, its first season, and it was a blowout. It beat Sonic 2, I believe. And it just came out, so there's the recency thing. Yeah, it's gonna win. I would LOL if Knuckles won, though.
I guess for the sake of our brand, right? We need Knuckles to win.
My
so I guess go
steelbook is
Knuckles,
shrink
but
wrapped, and it's half the price I paid for right now on Amazon. So whatever.
okay, here we have everyone's favorite. I'm just making this up, but best multiplayer game.
Yeah.
We have Call of Duty, Helldivers, Mario stuff, and Tekken. Who's gonna win that one?
This winner, I think, is actually pretty obvious. I would be shocked if it didn't win. Is Helldivers 2. TikTok made this game famous, and the one thing everyone talked about was like, oh my god, you got to get your friends to play it with you. Call of Duty is a game you're just jumping in by yourself. Tekken, yes, you might have a sparring partner to lab with, but you're playing by yourself. Warhammer kind of came and went, and people compared it to Helldivers. And Mario Party makes enemies. It doesn't make friends. So best multiplayer game. I mean, Helldivers 2 was just the funnest multiplayer game I've played in a long time.
No, I agree with Helldivers 2. I will say I think it lost its hype. I mean, it was really big early in the year. It came out in February, which might hurt it potentially in this category. But Helldivers is up, I believe, for other categories here. But I think it will at least get this one. I think this is, and it will get any award. I'd be shocked if it didn't get any awards. But I think if it's going to get one, it'll probably be best multiplayer game because it just, you can squad up with random people and it was still very fun. You can squad up with your friends. It was still very fun. And that to me is like, at the end of the day, like Call of Duty, yes, is a pinnacle of, of that type of shooter multiplayer game, but Call of Duty is also toxic as hell. So when Helldivers 2 was the polar opposite of that, where it was like you're on a team, no matter, even with randos, you're still on a team, and it felt fun to like kill some bugs or whatnot. So yeah, Helldivers 2 I think has the best shot of winning this.
Also, I believe it is still the second best-selling game of the year so far. A lot of people played this too. All right, now we have everyone's. I forgot about that category award. Best sports / racing.
It's always funny they differentiate sports and racing, which is probably there's somebody out there who gets pissed every year. They're like, racing is a sport.
Motorsports, you know what I mean? There's not that many racing games.
Yeah, so for this one, I mean, there's always a 2K every year, so I feel like it's not that. But I honestly haven't heard anything about any of these.
Devon.
Yeah, I know. So some 2K is really putting all their eggs in one pot here, or whatever the term is. I just picked WWE because I think that'd be funny. I don't know. I don't really have like a gauge on this. I'd never heard of any of these being necessarily bad, so I guess that's good for 2K. But screw it, WWE. John Cena, The Rock. They're all hype or whatever.
Actually, heard that F124 was pretty good. A nice technical showpiece of ray tracing and all that stuff. I don't know if it was this year or last year that EA Sports FC started to replace, FIFA because of the whole licensing thing. So I'm just gonna say that one because I think there's like a cool hypeness about it. I will just say whenever there's a tennis video game, it's always on the cover Serena Williams and some jackass you've never seen before. And I think I'm gonna change my answer to Topspin 2K25 because of that.
Honestly, yeah, I didn't even know Topspin was a series.
I think they brought it back.
Until I looked at this, so
I don't know. I remember Virtua Tennis. I love Virtua Tennis.
All right, this one is for the real gamers. Some say this is where PC gaming especially really got its start. For some, these real-time strategy games and the sim games. Who's winning this one?
This is a tough one. I don't think it's been a strong year for this genre. A lot of these games kind of came out and kind of died. I don't think they hit as hard as they wanted. My one pick, and it's a shot in the dark, I think Unicorn Overlord, just because it's a Vanillaware game and they never get as much credit as they deserve, and everyone says that after the game comes out, oh man, people should have given that more credit. And this is yet another Vanillaware classic people love, but then just forgot existed. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone's like all the sim strategy games are saving up to see if anyone can take down Civilization, whatever number it
Like
is now
7.
next year is coming out. I'm sure that one already has best sim strategy game on lock, unless it's really bad, just because it's a hype game for a lot of people. But I don't like. I kind of agree with you. I don't know. None of these are really like I've heard too much about. But there's one game I played back in the day, and so I guess I'm just gonna pick that one. Age of Mythology. I played a lot with my brother back in the day. I think that's honestly why he loves Civilization now, is because we played a lot of Age of Mythology, and
No, because you ruined his life.
yes, it's true. It's my fault. He has what like 2,000 hours in Civilization 5 or whatever. But yeah, I'm just gonna say Age of Mythology retold, made by World's Edge and Forgotten Empires, Xbox Game Studios. I don't know. I don't even know half of these, but whatever.
I think Microsoft owns it. I know that Kunitsugami game was a very interesting game, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's like a PS2 game in a good way, in terms of like, here's a weird idea," but I don't think it sold very well. All right, next up, best family. So the president usually has the first family, right? Is that best?
I don't know.
Does the
But yeah,
dog
this
that
is
tries to kill everyone count?
yeah, these are the 5 games here that you might be playing the next couple weeks here, with your family, or maybe you are staying away from all that because of recent events. Who knows? But yeah, we have Astrobot on here. We have Princess Peach, Showtime, Super Mario Party, Jamboree, Legend of Zelda. I feel like Legend of Zelda low key came and went, but I still think it was well received. So I feel like it's just gonna get a sneaky one right here. I think it's gonna get a sneaky one. I'm gonna pick Legend of Zelda. I know Astrobot is there, and that's probably a favorite. I'm just gonna go against the grain. I think based off past year's results, like for example, we'll get to one in particular. I think there's one game this year that's very much like Alan Wake last year, where Alan Wake got a couple of them. Was up for Game of the Year, but really didn't have a shot. But it did get a lot of the other subcategories. There's a game coming up I want to talk about when we get to that. But in this example, I think Zelda is just going to get this one. I think Astrobot might be a little bit too challenging for families, and that might hurt it here. That's the only reason I'm going against it. Still think it's a favorite. I wouldn't blame anyone for picking it. But I think Astrobot has bigger awards to go after.
Interesting. I've gone back and forth between 2 games. One I think is a more literal game that I would assume families probably would like the most. I go back and forth between Princess Peach Showtime, because that is a game where on Twitter you hear nothing but my 7-year-old daughter talks to me now because we play this game, like that type of stuff of like, my daughter loves this game and blah blah blah, and then like that meant, even though that game came and went, and unfortunately children aren't voting. It's adults in their 40s that fucking love Astrobot that are voting, and I think it's just going to be Astrobot, even though I think that game is too hard for young kids. I love that game. It is certainly the best game I played out of this group of 5. I've played 3 of them. Did not play Zelda or Princess Peach. Plucky Squire sucks, unfortunately. But I see Princess Peach actually being the real should-be winner, based off what I've seen. But it's going to be Astrobot. That game is people are going to be ravenously trying to get that game to win something. And because of that, it might win a couple things. And this would be one of them. All right, next up. Best fighting. Now, they don't say fighting game. Remember, Seafood was nominated once. That's a single-player game. It's not a fighting game.
That's right. That's right.
But all of these are fighting games. So which do you think is going to win?
I mean, the only one that I feel like people have talked about and that I've seen, be hype is Tekken 8. I think that one's the strongest to win it. I know Marvel vs. Capcom was we talked about it when it was announced and whatnot. And I feel like I mean, this is once again me going off vibes, and I haven't played any of these, so I can't really give you a guess on that front. But I think just based off what I've seen, I feel like I've only seen people talk about Tekken 8 and Multiverses, but I think Multiverses falls in kind of in the Fall Guys category of yeah, I like it. People like it, but like it has its fans who go to it, but it isn't like it's not in the same pedigree in terms of popularity as Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Street Fighter. You know what I'm saying?
Right, those
Like
are the big three
there's
for
a
sure.
there's a gap there, and I think Tekken 8 just has this in the bag, honestly. Outside of maybe a really outside shot of multiverses. I mean, I know the Dragon Ball games are always like fun for people. Once again, though, I feel like that's for like the DB fans. You know what I mean? That like really love that stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking on my ass here.
No, I'm with you. Although I will say, I feel like people just hate multiverses. When it came back, they're like, "Oh, it's slow and it sucks now." But you're right. It's gonna be Tekken 8. That is the best fighting game I've played in a very long time, which including Street Fighter 6, which I think is a brilliant game. Just Tekken 8 is just everything. It is just everything. It might be the best fighting game, period, for me.
Wow.
I can see a lot of people wanting to reward Disney's cooperation with Capcom to release all those old Marvel vs. Capcom and Capcom fighting games, and let's just give them the flowers so that maybe we'll get a MVC4. But I don't. It's a collection of old games. It's not a new game. It's a collection of old games. It has rollback netcode, which to a lot of people makes it feel new, but those are old games. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero isn't like Dragon Ball Fighters.
Sounds like a soda.
It's the Budokai games. It is those arena games where it's like over the shoulder thing, and apparently that game lets you do a lot of what if scenarios, and I think that's cool. Like, oh, what if Goku didn't, and Kakarot, Goku, and what was his brother's name? Raditz. What if they didn't die at the beginning? Like you can do all that stuff, and I know people go crazy, but the hype for that died in my own, perception. And Tekken 8, I'm biased. I still see just being, hell yeah, it's Tekken 8. They brought back this guy, and people are going ape shit. He's been in all of them, but because he dies in the story in the last one, they bring him back.
I heard he challenged Jake Paul as well to a fight, so we'll see if that comes
he's
up.
older than 58, but he would win. He's been thrown into lava and shit, and he still lives. All right.
All right, so next one we have here is, we both do Dungeons and Dragons, so, in a way we maybe have some stock into this category. Best RPG.
Not only that, but I play some of these games, so I feel like that's more relevant. Man, I have a game I would like to win everything it's in, but I know it's not going to. That being Final Fantasy. I didn't finish that game. I know you also didn't finish that game.
I have like 10 hours in it.
And I'm like maybe 20. But like in terms of distance in the story, it's closer. You know what I mean? But I can see this going back and forth between the DLC that came out for Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. But the thing I think is actually going to win is going to be Metaphor ReFantazio. That game came out recently. All I've ever heard of this game is, wow, the Persona team made a game about adults that have actual cool storytelling. It has none of the homophobia, transphobia, or anything like that the Persona games sometimes wiggle in there. And it's a game about an election and like being able to change like the dorky line is, can fantasy, alter reality in terms of like how you can then actually change your mind about things. And I mean, all the monsters are called humans because this is a world where there are no humans or stuff. I think those fans are going nuts over that game, and I feel like this is the only category that game has a chance at. So I think it's Metaphor ReFantazio.
Interesting. I was going to say real quick, do you know if this is the first time a DLC has been nominated for any awards? Because I thought there was a DLC award back in the day, but maybe I'm totally misremembering. I know I've seen some people talk about it. We'll get to Game of the Year where Shadow of the Erdtree is up, and I saw some people having a problem with that. I will say, just
personally, I don't think it should be, because how everyone talks about Shadow of the Erdtree requires them to talk about a game from 2 years ago in a lot of the same ways. Like, well, no, that what you're explaining is 2 years old. That game already won Game of the Year. I don't think you get like the handicap of like getting to do that again. But I think there might have been a best expansion, but like we don't really get them that often. The Game Awards put out a statement a few days before the announcement of these nominees, being like, hey, basically anything goes. If people want to nominate it, it goes. I think that enough outlets that are the ones that are nominating these have their own rules on stuff where I think enough of them wouldn't nominate a DLC that like Elden Ring might be the only one that would ever get enough to squeeze by. I think it is the highest rated DLC or expansion on Metacritic ever, or at least for an RPG. So I think like we will probably never see this phenomena again. I think people are
Yeah.
just wanting, people are just wanting the
I
thing
just
that
didn't
they
remember
love
in the
to.
past because I could have sworn there was something in the past that would it
Not
would
to
be for
my
like that. But
knowledge, and I think you're right. Like people are making a big deal of it because I think it's new. But what do you
yeah,
think?
because the only argument I was gonna say the only argument I like when I first saw it, I'm like that's weird. I'm like I feel like a DLC shouldn't be up for a game of the year because it's still is just taking it's elements of the other game. But I was like, oh, but I haven't played it. I don't know, like whatever. Maybe it's a whole other game, like in terms of hours. So like maybe that's the argument, whatever. But I did see like some folks, like game journalists mostly, talk about like for Pro It, which is like yeah, it's very good and like expands on things, blah blah blah. Blah. Then I saw other people against it, saying like it requires you to already have 80 to 100 hours in the
Yeah.
game the original game to even get access to that. Like, yes, it's great, fantastic, and it's rewarding, but like, is it really? Can it be game of the year if you need to get through 100 hours potentially of the original game to like actually access it? So I don't really have a strong opinion. I think it'll be funny if it. Well, we'll get to game of the year. I think it'll be funny if it wins, but I just wanted to point it out as we.
Yeah.
This is our
I would
first
say
instance of it.
honestly, they have a category for this type of stuff. It's best ongoing game.
I
I
think
mean,
that's
and,
fair.
and I mean, it's not exactly the same, but like, here's a gigantic update to a game you love. That it should be there, personally. Like, that is what that is. Because, like, other than that, like, what's the difference between that and a Fortnite season? Quality and man hours and all that stuff, I get it.
Hey, Snoop Dogg's in that though.
Snoop Dogg was in Tekken Tag too. That's the best. Actually, that is actually the best fighting game of all time. So I don't know. But I can see it going to Elden Ring, like you're saying, because of that. But next one up, best action slash adventure.
Yeah, for this one, I'm probably just gonna go with Astrobot just because I think this is to me like I know we discussed earlier best family game, but for me this is where like I can see Astrobot starting to start stacking some trophies up here and potentially get the biggest one. But I think it starts here. I'm looking back at other game awards. If it doesn't get this, I'd be shocked. But I was looking at other game awards last year, and like Baldur's Gate got like 4 or whatever before winning Game of the Year. So if it's, I think early on in the night we'll know if Astrobot has a strong chance. I think if it gets this, unless it has a Alan Wake kind of thing where Alan Wake got like 2 or 3 as well, but obviously lost in Game of the Year. But I feel like usually people have like a one that's really strong, and then if it gets other awards, it kind of solidifies it for me. I think in the past it was always kind of like, oh well, I'm gonna give that one Game of the Year, so I'm gonna give someone else this sub award. But I feel like they don't do that anymore. I feel like they're like, nope, you're gonna get 7 awards, Last of Us Part 2 or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm gonna go Astrobot. I think selfishly, I would love to see like a horror game like Silent Hill 2 get recognized. I think that'd be
I
cool.
just don't
But
think people consider that an action adventure game, unfortunately.
but hey, Prince of Persia, I know also I've heard some decent things on that as well. So, but yeah, it's Astrobot, I think.
I think so as well. The only one I could see otherwise being that might be Prince of Persia. I have it. I haven't played it. I have it on my console now, but haven't gotten a chance to start it up yet. Because I know that was like such a well loved game that also well before the nominees were announced, Ubisoft was like, yeah, it didn't meet our expectations. The team is now working on something else now. Like, have all been split up. So like, I feel like there's a like, we need to tell Ubisoft off and give their game a nomination, an award. I can see that, but no, this is the award that Astrobot wins. I don't think it might. It might not win any others.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Next one we have is what was a little confusing to me because you have Best Action Adventure. I really think you should just call it Best Adventure and call it a day, instead of having another one that's just Best Action. There's no adventure in this one, Ethan. It's just action.
Even
Who's
though
winning
there
this
is
one?
adventure in 2 of these. You go on a journey in 2 of these games, so... Here's the thing. I think it's cute that Call of Duty's on, but an action game is not a shooter. There's a lot of action in the Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and I know there are people saying that it is the best Call of Duty in years. Just because it has action in its set pieces and cutscenes and whatnot doesn't mean it is a good action game. It's a shooter. There are 2 games on this list that I would consider actually action games, and one that's a hybrid being Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. I haven't seen too much of that game. Kind of died. Between Black Myth Wukong and Stellar Blade, I think way more people bought Black Myth Wukong, and a lot more people actually liked the action in Black Myth Wukong for it to win. I know the Gooners on Twitter are going to be upset that Stellar Blade isn't in anything else. They want this game to be Game of the Year, and I haven't played it, and I want to play it. I also want to play Black Myth Wukong, but I think that is the game where people are like, this game was beautiful, and it's got so much action, and there is wow, this is a big game from China, and we don't get them, so let's reward them, you know what I mean? And say, hey, good job, team that made this game. Game science.
Yeah, I agree with you. I had Stellar Blade or Black Myth Wukong winning this, but I'm definitely leaning towards Black Myth Wukong because here's my thing. I think Black Myth Wukong, kind of what you were saying, it's a really big game from China, and there was a lot of hype around it, and it met that hype. I mean, I went on Google too earlier to see like what are like the reviews, like just people putting on there, and it has like out of like 10,000 reviews on Steam, it has 5 stars. Like that's really hard to do. So people are loving this game. To me though, like I was mentioning earlier, there's one game that we were getting to that I feel like is this year's Alan Wake in terms of I feel like out of nowhere it's going to get like 4 or 5 awards. I think it's Black Myth Wukong. I think it's going to do some surprise. It's going to surprise a lot of people, and I think it's going to get a lot of awards. I don't know if it'll win Game of the Year, but I wouldn't be surprised either. But I think it's at least going to get a bunch of awards, and it's going to start with this one right here, an action game.
I agree. All right, next up, best VR/AR.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about AR and VR games on this show, and we're kind of like, yeah, everything kind of just it looks cool, but it's mostly all the time just a shooter in a 3D. You're just going through like a hallway or whatever, and you shoot some dudes. There's a couple here and there we get every couple years that are like, oh, this is different, and like they're trying to use the technology in unique ways, but for the most part they're all kind of the same. I just said for the sake of I feel like we just talked about it, or I remember seeing a trailer for it, was Metro Awakening, and I know people like the Metro games, so I said that one, but also I can see it being Batman, because isn't that the last time with what's his name as the Batman voice?
No.
Of
Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is Kevin Conroy's
was it that? That's what I'm thinking
Batman
of.
appearance. That's one where he's evil and dies.
Never mind then.
Yeah. No, this is Sonic the Hedgehog. Roger Craig Smith is the voice of Batman in this.
Well then I'll say that one, but I originally said Metro Awakening, but I'll say Batman. People like Batman. I don't know.
I'm with you on Batman. It just came
opinion.
out. It's made by Camouflage, who made the excellent Iron Man VR game for PlayStation VR. I've seen nothing but high praise for Batman Arkham Shadow. It is a game that isn't a first-person shooter, which is, like you said, 9.5 out of 10 VR games that come out these days, because this is the easiest type of thing to conceptualize, I think. I think that's a shoo-in. Asgard's Wrath 2... when that game was coming out and came out, the reviews and everyone was saying like, hey, this is a real game that is in VR. People are also saying that about Metro. You know what I mean? So, but I think Batman has that recency. I think people want to be like, man, it sucks we didn't get a Batman game out of Rocksteady earlier this year with that Suicide Squad thing. And we all wanted to hate Batman Arkham Shadow for reasons. It turns out it's really great. All right. Kind of like the Silent Hill 2 thing. Everyone wanted to say that Blooper didn't deserve that game. I was one of those people. I'm wrong. They deserved it. They did a good job, from what I heard. Same thing with Batman Arkham Shadow. No one wanted it. Now people want it.
All right, now we have what to me is actually the real gamer award because everyone always talks about consoles and the PC war, but really the real gamers are out there on their phones all day. And this award has some interesting ones. Best mobile game.
It's Balatro. It came out on mobile recently, and all I've ever heard is, "Oh, I just stopped doing things because Balatro's on my phone. I don't go to work. I play Balatro at work." I know there are those Genshin Impact. I almost said freaks. I mean fans that would love if Zenless Zone Zero got like its horniness. Here's my thing with that game: the animation's way too crazy. It is just simply Balatro. I mean, Pokemon. I don't consider that as much of a game, as much of a fun thing on my phone that I get to play the card game with.
It's a dopamine hit versus a game.
It's a dopamine hit. It's a scary dopamine hit. But no, it is Balatro. It's Balatro. That is the game. We're now going to see the Balatro sweep. I'm telling you this right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, even when before you were telling me Balatro, like I remember seeing like everyone on Twitch playing it and whatnot when it first came out, and then I know people haven't stopped talking about it. I know it has a pretty strong chance to get game of the year as well. But if it doesn't get game of the year, it could be once again like Alan Wake. We have a couple movies. Wow, I'm always on. Sorry, video game movies, folks. We always do that on here.
Like and subscribe for more.
Like and subscribe. No, Balatro kind of like once again Alan Wake, and I keep pointing to that just because I feel like more so Alan Wake came out of nowhere. I feel like to a certain degree I didn't realize it was that hype, but Balatro is way more hype than that, so I think it should be getting multiple awards and has, like I said, a strong chance of getting Game of the Year. But if it doesn't get one, it probably won't be Game of the Year just because there's a lot of strong ones in Game of the Year. But I think it will definitely, like you said, probably get a sweep here, if not 2 out of 3, I think is the next couple here.
Yeah. Next up, best debut indie game.
Yep, we have a couple on here that actually I haven't played any of these, but I'm familiar with. Like I remember Pacific Drive. I think I had that actually on my Steam wish list because I like those kind of car sim games where you're driving through like.
It's a roguelike too, right? It's something. I think like so.
That. That looked interesting, but I haven't heard like anyone really talk about it. But I remember seeing it. And then Animal Well, I know that I believe you played a little bit of, and you said it was pretty good.
More than a little.
And then obviously Balatro's on here. Probably Balatro has it, but I could, maybe see Animal Well, but I think Balatro is like 95% chance of winning this award.
I will say I don't know much about Manor Lords. Pacific Drive looked cool. Unfortunately, I think it came and went. Plucky Squire was a huge disappointment. The game doesn't stop talking. What looked like a cute Zelda game in a pop-up picture book that then you morph out and you're in this kid's bedroom. Sounded like such a neat idea, but the game won't stop talking. It stops you at every moment to tell you the things you see. I bet it would be a great game for kids, but I wanted more from it. I'm in the process now of kind of making a video of my top 10 favorite games of the year. And spoilers, I have yet to decide if my number 1 and number 2... Well, my number 1 and number 2 are Animal Well and Balatro. I'm not sure which is number 1 and which is number 2.
Oh, wow. So you have Animal Well potentially higher than Balatro? I thought Balatro was going to be your lock for Game of the Year.
I'm going back and forth, man. Animal Well is the most beautiful game I've played that wasn't telling me it is. It's really hard to explain that. My video will probably say more. It is the smartest game I've played in a very long time. It is a sequel to a game that this individual creator had nothing to do with, nor would anyone else, I feel like, describe it as a sequel to that specific game, a 2012 game called Fez. It is very rare for me to see a video game do something within a genre I played so many of and do it new in ways that is way more than a neat mechanic that I haven't seen before. This game is nothing but surprises, and it is a game that says you're going to surprise yourself because we're not going to tell you anything. This is a game where if you're playing on PC and you have a printer connected to your computer, it uses that for a puzzle, and it doesn't tell you. It'll print.
That's crazy.
It'll print out.
What?
It'll print out an origami rabbit for you to fold up. So yeah, there's a code on there. You won't realize that it's doing that until your printer starts turning on. It is a game that had me pull up a barcode scanner on my app to scan grass on the screen. It is a Metroidvania with the most beautiful pixel art I've ever seen, and I highly recommend it. However, unfortunately, it's just a Balatro sweep. I know this Balatro's going to win. Animal Well deserves to win something. It's got 2 categories, and so is Balatro on both of them, and Balatro is just going to win. So, and it deserves it too. Like, I just need to give Animal Well defense. Everyone knows about Balatro. Balatro might be a perfect video game. Animal Well is it's really good.
All right, next one is Best Independent Game. Once again, you have Animal Well and Balatro on here and some other ones. Do you think there's a chance, though, potentially that, like I said, I could see Balatro sweep 100%, but I also could see, like you said, if Animal Well is being well received by, like, you know, the actual game journalists who have more weights in their votes here, you know, maybe they give one to Animal Well at some point, but I feel like if you're going to give it, maybe do best debut indie game, or maybe, like, I can see it switch though. I don't know, but it's probably Balatro sweep, but maybe there's a chance they're like, you know what, Animal Well deserves some credit. Let's give him an award.
Yeah, and what muddies it up is UFO 50 is also in here, and I love that game. I don't know if you've heard of UFO 50.
I have not.
UFO 50 is genius. It is something that a lot of big publishers and small independent creators wish that they could do, but it is not financially feasible to do it this way. But when you're an independent creator who has made a shit ton of money off of Spelunky, you get to spend 7 years with a small group of people making 50 NES games for a fake console. Every single one of these 50 games. So what it is, it's basically like a collection of ROMs. Here are the 50 games. You pick any of them. They're for a video game console, a fake video game console that released in the 80s. It's got a fake company behind it, a fake story. Every game has a release year, and some of these have sequels, and you see an evolution in the technology being used in the games. But
That's cool.
Every single game is got something that you could put into a real game. These are all real games. They are fully functionable games. There's an entire JRPG in here. There are shooters. There are puzzle games. There are many puzzle games. Half the games have multiplayer components. It is insane what they did. There are genius ideas that are used in one game here and another game there. And it's $20 or maybe 25. Like, the majority of these 50 games could be sold for $20 to $25. It is that good. And then there's this meta thing going on where, like, maybe the games overlap a little bit, and there's some weird glitchy stuff you can do with secret codes and whatnot. And I don't even know if people have found everything that the game has to offer. I just don't think a lot of people played it. It's on Steam only right now. It would do wonders on the Nintendo Switch. Now, the Steam Deck, wonders on there as well, but that is a game where it's like, man, this is so Nintendo coded. It should be on the Nintendo machine, and that will come next year. Neva is a beautiful looking game, and Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is a very smart puzzle game. Balatro is the best independent game of the year. It just is. It just is. Like, I think that is... People are going to look at that and be like, what was the best independent game? Oh, it was obviously Balatro, and they're going to vote for that, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Like I said, I think maybe there's an outside chance, you know, Animal Well gets it. But from what you described from UFO 50 sounds cool, and that can maybe split votes if there was a campaign to get Animal Well, you know, maybe
True.
a chance. So, I think you're right. We're going to get Balatro sweep here. You know, and I think that will be, you know, the big thing for Balatro. And then like I said, I don't know if it will win Game of the Year, but, you know, if it has a sweep here, that's still something to be proud of, right? If you're, if you made that game. So I agree.
One last UFO 50 pitch. One of the games is a strategy game about inviting cool people to a party. Don't let the cops come.
Hell yeah.
All right. Next up, best community support. So this isn't best ongoing game. This is the best, like, hey,
Customer
we're the
service.
yeah, in a way we're the best devs that are interacting with you guys and talking to you guys and doing all that stuff. So it's about more so less the quality of the game, but more so the quality of the people behind it, if that makes sense.
The support behind it,
Yeah.
community support. No, I think this, like, at first I was like, man, this is tough. I'm like, actually, no, this is a Helldivers 2 lock, mostly because they had a much bigger audience, I think, than they were prepared for. Like, I think they were like, yeah, we're going to do well because we're a PlayStation exclusive and, like, we have our fans from the original game. But I don't think anybody, even probably PlayStation, expected
Right.
how big that game was when it came out. I mean, me and you were like, hey, let's pre-order it. It'll be fun. And like,
Because we
were
liked
like,
the
what
original. We played
Yeah,
it
and we
once
were
for
like,
an
what the
afternoon. We're like,
hell?
this is fun, and then it became the biggest thing on the planet. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I think that's the first reason they deserve this award. Then I think the second one is like their cohesion of like their marketing and social media, and even how they do like, hey, bug fixes and those kind of things. The announcements they make, right, still fit in the world that they created in the game,
Exactly.
and I think that's fun.
That's
Like
an
it just
art in and of
rewards.
itself. It feels like they are talking to us actual Helldivers and not
Yeah.
customers.
Even when they were dealing with like generally fairly angry people, being like, hey, I bought this game, I can't play. They still were keeping in the like marketing character of like, sorry, Helldivers, we're having issues, and they'll come up
Right.
with some jargon that works for their universe that they created. So I think they have this. I mean, obviously Fortnite's always Fortnite, and I know like we meme about it, but they have a big player base and they do a good
Right.
job of keeping it interesting for the people who keep coming back to that. Um, you know, uh, I know Final Fantasy is always there too, and Baldur's Gate. I think Baldur's Gate has a chance just because of the hype. It won Game of the Year last year, and like people still play it and will like it. But I think Helldivers 2 deserves this, and I think honestly has this on lock just because of the two things I mentioned.
Yeah, I want to shout out Baldur's Gate 3. Mutual friend of the show and channel, David. He spends more time with that game than his own children. But I will say, Helldivers 2, they made some change over the summer that I was unaware of that got a negative reaction. And they backpedaled on that immediately and then said, okay, yeah, so for the next 60 days, we're going to have daily dev talks to you about the stuff we're doing, and we're talking to you guys and being extremely transparent. And to me, that alone gets you the gold for that. But I'll also say this about Fortnite, because again, it is mainly games industry people that are being reached out to that are 80% of the vote, weighted to be 80% of the vote. I think everyone in that field is over Fortnite. Like it exists and it's doing the thing still, but it's not. The hype is over for
I
those
feel like it was
types
probably
of
the
people.
last. It might have been the last one added. I only shouted it out just because I think I'll give him credit for the
If
player
this was
base
up to the
aspect.
player base fans, Fortnite would win anything it could possibly be in because there's just that many
Yeah.
people for sure, and they wouldn't even know what a No Man's Sky is. Best ongoing. Not ongoing game, just best ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Destiny 2's been on this award for the 5 years straight or something. I think it's won maybe one time. I don't think it's that. I feel like no one has talked about Diablo, but maybe I'm just not seeing it in my circle. But whatever. We just talked about Fortnite. I have enough said about Fortnite. Obviously, Final Fantasy always has a pretty
I think it
big
wins
player
often
base.
too.
But I think Helldivers 2. The only thing is, I think what's hurting it is like I said, I feel like some of the hype around the game, they still have a big base playing it week in, week out. But like, I'm trying not to use like my personal experience with it, where we played a bunch in February and March. But I feel like people I follow and whatnot haven't been talking about it like they were 6 months ago. So I can see that kind of hurting it. And then maybe they're like, hey, we'll give Helldivers 2 other awards. Helldivers just came out. Can it be really an ongoing game if it just came out? You know what I mean? Like the logic there
Right.
might break for some people, but maybe I'm thinking too deeply into it. But I think a safe pick is Helldivers 2, but I can also see it being just Final Fantasy or, just because this is such a weird award to me. It's just kind of hard to gauge.
Final Fantasy is like League in the sense that there's just a large group of people that's all. Hey, do you want to play some 14 with me? Want to play some 14? And like, I want to. I bought that game on Steam, or no, I bought it off their own store years ago when I built my computer and I got through like the tutorial. I'm like, I'm gonna wait, and never went back. And then my subscription ran out. I will say Destiny 2 had its big story finale expansion this year. So that's a big thing for people. Final Fantasy 14 had their last expansion. They're now on the, hey, we're riding this game out with new stuff until maybe we make a new MMO. But we're definitely going to keep coming out with expansions, but the story's kind of done. We're in kind of bonus time, and I think Destiny is transitioning into that as well. So I think we're going to see this award might change a bit over the next couple of years as Destiny might go away. I think it is
Unless
Helldivers.
there's a Destiny 3 secretly somewhere.
Oh, then
which
the reports are then hell no, there isn't.
Really?
Hell no, there isn't. It's not financially feasible for them. I'm gonna give it to Helldivers 2 because while I agree with you, and I think the thing that's hurting them is that they obviously were not prepared for the large amount of players. Besides weapons and some new enemy types, there isn't new content. Like, there isn't that third faction isn't in yet. There isn't new types of stuff that isn't just, here's a different type of kill these guys type of things. I want, like, way new objectives. We haven't gotten, like, an expansion to it yet. Game's not a year old either. But I see that's why the hyped out is because, okay, we are still doing the same thing. The thing that carries it for people, the thing that carries it for people is the meta narrative and how there is literally at Arrowhead a single game master controlling the war and being like, okay, now these guys are going here. All right, do you want to? Okay, here are your options. You have this planet or this planet. One of these is going to fall when the players claim the other one. How are we gonna handle this? And seeing how they handle that on TikTok and all the marketing things you mentioned earlier, like that to me is all of a part of it. Like TikTok really did make everyone feel like we are in this war together. You know what I mean? And that's not nothing. That is a part of this for sure. I think that as far as like an ongoing game, that had the most like excitement, hype, and it's new, which, you know, I think does give it, you know, I know Diablo came out last year. It got an expansion. I think that's why it's nominated, because it's gotten, but, you know, Erdtree.
So why isn't, I was going to say, why isn't Erdtree on
Diablo is
here?
also, unfortunately, a live service game. I was playing that local co-op on my PlayStation and kind of disappointed that other random guys are running around in my private world, which I realize is not private. Diablo 4 has more in line with Destiny than it does Diablo 2 or Diablo 3, unfortunately, in that sense. And it is annoying to see people start talking shit randomly in this game.
All right, now we have games for impact. You know, these are actually I just realized there's 6. It looks like on here compared to 5. So I guess they can change how many nominees get into award when they want. It's fine though, whatever. I don't really care that much. It's just funny to think about, like, you know what? Fuck it. Game of the Year has 10. Like, why not? Why make it? We should just make it more crazy.
That would be interesting. I mean? Imagine if there's 20 that could be voted for. Like, there isn't just the one obvious one anymore.
Hey,
you know.
You know what you could do with that is, like, any game that's mentioned at all immediately gets put in the Game of the Year. That could be. You know, then you have potentially like 30 games up, and really it's winner takes all, free for all.
This is a bit of a toss-up. I will say Indika and Tales of Kanzaro Zao came and went. Life is Strange, it is kind of funny that it's on here. It has that like corporate flair version of like inclusivity, if that makes sense, even though I don't think this particular game was trying to do any of that stuff. I think the last Life is Strange was. I think it has that like you can even look at the picture, look at the rainbows, that, you know what I mean, like that version of like hey, no one else is doing this, so we get to be the guys making this type of thing on a corporate level. Senua's Saga, I don't think is going to win anything, really,
Yeah,
I think
unfortunately.
I just think people don't care about that game. People are like, oh, this is actually not what I wanted. And you spend how long? I think this is the only category that Neva has a real shot at winning. I think it has the shot to win because I think the game is beautiful. It looks like regardless of this actual category's main focus, which is about having something to say, you know what I mean, something actually important to say. I think that game is just, hey, how is this a video game? This looks like just animation. This game looks beautiful, and I think that is honestly just what's gonna win people over.
Never say never is what they should be doing, to promote, getting this Games for Impact award. Yeah, I mean, I want to play Hellblade 2. I just don't have an Xbox, and my PC, I don't think my PC could play it, but it's not going to be the quality I want to play it at. So I'm kind of hoping for the probably inevitable PlayStation 5 release of that, because I did like the first one. Um, and yeah, so we'll see. But I don't know. I really didn't pick one. 'Cause I just don't like, to me, like these games. To me, I don't really have like I know Hellblade 2, or Hellblade, the first one, is a lot about mental health and whatnot. More specifically about like people who deal with like schizophrenia and whatnot. But I've also seen an argument against it, saying that actually is just using it as a cool thing, like, oh, look how cool is, they, for the
Yeah,
sake of the gameplay, right? Rather than actually bringing awareness to it, it's more of a, hey, we wanted to make this into a way we want, to fit an aesthetic rather than a narrative. So I don't think it's going to win either. Just unless the game actually did something,
I
to
think everything
push
you're
people
saying
in the.
about its message, I think people just didn't give a shit this time around. Like, cool, it's the same thing you said last time, but again.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you
which
know,
is fine. Like
yeah,
people like that, like the game. I hope it's good and I want to play it. But for
yeah.
the sake of this, yeah. I mean, I don't know the other ones.
Indica is about I
I think isn't
believe
that? I think we
Eastern
saw a
European
trailer for that.
religion, but it looks very strangely video gamey for what it's supposed to be looking like.
Yeah,
Tales of Kanzaro Zao is a Metroidvania game. Um, I know the creator is black. I do not know if he is African, like how this game is set in, but maybe family heritage. But it's drawing on that stuff, regardless. And I know that made it a target for a lot of weirdos. Like,
yeah. I mean, I don't. To me, I don't have a strong opinion. I can't really pick one.
I have Tales of Kanzaro Zao downloaded on my PlayStation, and Indica's on my wish list. I want to play both these games. I haven't had the time.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I don't know. I'll just pick Indica just to put something on the board. But I don't. I haven't played any of these, so
Indica
I don't
has a
know.
dedicated pray button. So,
Yeah, and I feel like this is one of those things too. You can't like. I don't know. It's tough with these awards. It's very, very much more subjective, I think, compared to other awards where there's, hey, I liked this gameplay, I didn't like this gameplay. Like we're talking about messages and execution of those messages, a little bit different. So
all right. Next up is innovation and accessibility. Now, all of these games seem to be doing the same kind of thing, of just, hey, it's a lot easier for people with hard vision to see, hard of hearing to hear, hard of motor functions to control. So I'm very curious what one you think is going to win.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, it's gonna sound awful. Can Call of Duty Black Ops or just any Call of Duty really be pro accessibility when you allow them to drop slurs and stuff in the game and they promote the proximity chat now? Can you really be accessible if you're making it? Actually, yes. Maybe it's so accessible that you allow the most awful people in gaming to yell at you
Hey,
that
the
they're
hard
doing
of
your
hearing
mom.
deserve to be able to hear those slurs over Xbox Live.
But like, I don't know. Once again, this is one of those things where I'm like, I'd have to play these and then mess with these features. So I can't really like,
Right, we're
I
we're
don't.
not the people, and I know this is not the same people voting for this one. This is a private consulting panel chose these five, and I believe they're the ones that are extremely weighted on voting for, which makes sense because like they would know. Um,
let's just say Dragon Age. I'm just gonna put Dragon Age because I feel like I haven't seen it on here, but I remember people liking the game, and I'll just say Dragon Age. I don't know.
I'm gonna say
just
Prince
putting
of
something on the board.
Persia, because again, I think people are gonna be like, this game deserved more. Yeah, it's up for something. I vote for that one. Who knows? Maybe it'll be Call of Duty.
Best performance, and we're not talking about the teraflops, folks. We're talking about the actors and actresses and those who act out characters or things in the game. Who's winning this one?
So I will say, only played one of the 5 games, and I didn't play very much of it. I think you're in the same boat. I will say, from what I've heard of Silent Hill 2, I think Luke Roberts has sounded like he's did a really good job. This is going to sound really mean because I don't want to rag on Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, but I think because Melina there won previously for that game, and the story was like, oh, she's not an actor. She was basically a placeholder, but she really nailed it. I think people don't, this is really mean to say, I don't think they give a shit about that story anymore. Like, hey, you did it again. Congrats. Now you're established. I don't even know what the Star Wars Outlaw lady sounds like, so I don't know if Humberly Gonzalez did a good job or not. Life is Strange, again, I don't even know. I believe Hannah voices Max in that game, the main character, so I don't know if if she did good or not. I will just say this, Brianna White is going to win. I did not finish Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I do not know what happens in that game. Do not spoil it for me or Devon, because at least I will eventually finish that game. If the big thing with her character, Aerith, happens at this game, I would imagine it would be the ending for it, she will win because of that. There's a reason it's her and not the guy who voices Cloud, or Tifa, or Sephiroth, or Zack. You know what I mean? It's the reason why it's her.
Or that dog guy.
Red 13, yes. He does a good job, too. There's a reason why it's her and not anyone else that's up. And I imagine it's because of the spoiler that you probably are already writing in the comments. While you're at it, like and subscribe, please. It's going to be her. It's going to be her.
No, yeah, I mean, I could see that. It's more, which is like, is that even fair? You know what I mean? Where it's like,
it's not fair, but
you know what I mean? The story,
right?
You know, the story element to like, yes, the performance can be great and whatnot, but it's not fair that if like the story helps like you kind of the voter maybe feel like, you know, in a way like sorry or like, oh no, you know. But yeah, I can see that. Like I said, Final Fantasy VII like is on a couple of these awards, but I feel like just like I don't know, I feel like it isn't hitting as big as like the first one, because I think it's always tough. A sequel's, it's really hard to like win. God of War Ragnarok, same thing. It didn't win Game of the Year after the first one did, because I think it's really hard to do back to back unless you're Last of Us. I think Last of Us is an outlier, and I can hear an argument why Last of Us Part 2 probably shouldn't have won, but it's an outlier.
80
like
should have won
think
instead.
It is it's really tough to, I think, win the big thing again. So I can see if Final Fantasy VII is going to get anything, it's going to get these kind of these other awards for like best performance. There's one coming up that I think is a lock for them just because of its
I think I know what one you're talking about. Yeah.
For its nostalgia, basically, for the OG version of the game, and being basically remastered or redone. But yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, I agree with you.
All right, best audio design. This is not music. This is the audio itself. Yeah, I mean, I know Call of Duty has won a lot of these in the past.
I'm telling you.
What do you think is going to win?
I think it'll be Astrobot because of their, PlayStation can cheat with their controller and have the sounds come out of their controller and use the vibration and all that. I know you're not you're thinking about like, in game the sound effects, and I think, I haven't played the new one, but from even like the original Astrobot there, or the one that came with the PS5 rather, like it was all the worlds you're in had like unique sounds and sound effects that made you feel like you're in it. But what I liked about it was always like the addition of what was happening on your controller. So, and I'm assuming that's the same in the new one.
10 times more so, yeah.
Right. So I think it's unfair because like the other ones are like, yeah, if I have my headphones on and I'm playing COD, like, yeah, it's going to be sound great because I can hear when someone's 10 feet behind me and whatnot, or, Hellblade 2 with, even the first Hellblade when I played, like, with the atmospheric kind of stuff. I get it. Silent Hill 2, horror games need the atmosphere for it to even start to be scary,
Right.
right? So I think maybe you can do Silent Hill 2, but I think that, like, Astrobot is probably going to take this just because, like I said, the handheld thing being an element that the other ones don't really have as much, or at least not purposely as much. I know sometimes there's games that add it to just the PlayStation version, but Astrobot's made for PlayStation and the controller
Right.
itself, so
Right.
I think it's Astrobot. Outside of the only one I could think of would be Silent Hill 2. I think just in terms of the atmosphere, I can see that, but really, I think it's Astrobot.
I actually think it is Silent Hill 2 because I think that's a game people are like, this will not win anything else. But it can win this one because it's an easy throwaway award, I think, to a lot of people. I don't think they care that much about audio design. They care about music, which is its own category. Um, but I could see Silent Hill 2 taking it. I can also see people being like, hey, fine, Senua Saga, Hellblade 2, here's a thing. You get a thing. It's this one. Astrobot could easily sweep though. It's tough to say. Since you said Astrobot, mine's gonna be on Silent Hill 2 then.
All right, so hopefully one of us will win.
Yeah. All right,
um,
so now it is best score and music.
I said it earlier. I don't think Final Fantasy VII is going to win game of the year because of just it's hard to win those big awards when you're a sequel, even if it is hype. Like I said, Last of Us Part 2 is an outlier, I think. But if it's going to win any award out of this list, it's going to be this one, folks. I mean, there's a reason there's a touring band that I feel like is coming to Denver once a year. I feel like, and the tickets are like $200 to see the band play Final Fantasy songs specifically from Final Fantasy VII. And people liked them in the original games, and they've obviously redone it with a full
Right.
orchestra and
Yeah, it's
whatnot.
the nostalgia cheating thing because you have all these artists now bringing in to lovingly recreate and like emphasize like these songs and make new ones in that style. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yes, I think it's Final Fantasy Rebirth, but going back to Silent Hill 2, I haven't listened to this soundtrack in particular, but I know like the movie, for example, and I use some of the Silent Hill soundtrack for like some of my Twitch streams and whatnot in the past because I love their kind of eeriness that they have. So I just want to give a shout to Silent Hill 2 though, because I haven't listened to it yet, but I just know it's good and it's gonna be on my list to like listen to at some point. I love it's really hard to do a good memorable soundtrack in horror because most of the time you want to make kind of your sounds to fit with the scariness, but when you're doing an atmospheric thing like Silent Hill 2, I think you need to have a good soundtrack. But they actually, compared to other like horror games and movies, right, there's like actual like melodies that they use a lot and whatnot, whether it's like guitar stuff and whatnot. So but I also give it time on my ass. Maybe Silent Hill 2 soundtrack sucks ass, and I just haven't listened to it yet. But I'm pretty sure the one I've used for my Twitch is the original stuff.
Okay.
So Silent Hill 2. I also like the movies soundtracks. So.
Nice. Yeah, I jumped in earlier. I meant Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is gonna win this one. I will say Astrobot's got good music. That speed run music
That's true.
is really good.
I forget about the soundtrack in the
Yeah.
PlayStation 5
Metaphor
entry game.
Metaphor also good music from what I'm hearing on YouTube. Really good music, and I have no idea if Stellar Blade has music or not. It's just a visual
Well,
delight.
actually, the DLC that's coming out will have Nier
Well,
Automata music. So does that mean
could be
it gets
game
best
of the
score
year? Remember, because that's a
for next year? For next year.
all right.
All right, we're getting kind of in the home stretch here. We have best art direction. And this one to me is tough because obviously art direction is saying like, you have a plan with your art. I mean, every game has like, concept artists and whatnot, but there's I think best art direction is when you really like knock it out of the park of like making emphasis like, hey, this game is pretty or has a consistent color palette. And obviously, I feel like sometimes this award always goes to like the high fidelity games. But I'm curious if you think he's going to win. But I think there's one that's going to take this just because of its. I feel like it tends to lean towards, like I said, high fidelity, realistic graphics sometimes.
So I think honestly, this is the closest to being anybody's game. I think the weakest, unfortunately, is Neva, just because it's like you're
It's
saying.
never had a chance.
I whenever I hear Neva or see Neva, I think of the Skyrim guards who said Neva should have come here.
Never should have come
Yeah.
here.
I think Neva is probably the weakest because it's an indie game and it doesn't have the mostest graphics as possible. Although it deserves to win, I think all 5 of these deserve to win. Metaphor is beautiful. Astrobot is beautiful. It is very, very physical in its appearance. And it's cheating, but seeing all the little PlayStation guys, all of them, and oh my god, like I think that counts towards best art direction. I think ultimately though, there is one studio that is on here that consistently is lauded for not their technicality, not their polygon counts or anything like that, but pure art direction trumping everything, is From Software, and Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is going to win. I earlier this year went through Dark Souls 3 to platinum it. I didn't platinum it, but I will eventually. And like I'm seeing mistakes left and right. Mistakes in like the graphics, like things that should not be there, or like I'm seeing the underside of stones and steps because they didn't put them low enough, but like the game is more beautiful than any game I've seen from 2017 when it came out. I think that was the year it came out. Elden Ring's the same way. It is not on the technical level of Black Myth Wukong at all, but it's gorgeous. Like, and stills and videos don't do it justice as much as playing it yourself on a television and walking out and seeing the vistas. I have not played the DLC for Shadow of the Erdtree, so I do not know the specific views. I actually have avoided looking at anything because I actually would like to not be spoiled when I do go back and play it. But I can tell you right now, I think it's going to win, but it is legitimately anybody's game to me. What about you?
I said earlier that Black Myth Wukong is this year's Alan Wake, where it was in a bunch of awards, and like I feel like not many people picked it to win those, and it kind of came out. I think because of what you said, it's a tough competition. I think you're going to see a lot of split votes, but I believe in the Black Myth Wukong narrative and all the fans. All right, I think China is going to outvote every American. All right, because China is going to back this game,
and it's a beautiful looking game.
It is a beautiful looking game. I'm joking most with that, but no, I think I do believe in the Black Myth Wukong kind of getting a lot of the awards. I don't think people are expecting them to. I think the hype is there. I still don't think it'll win Game of the Year, but like I said, it also would not shock me though if it does. Like if I can see it surprising some people, but I think we'll see it in the night. If it starts winning these awards, then you gotta start thinking maybe it'll win the whole thing. But it's tough because like I looked at last year's awards, and I think like Alan Wake won Best Game Direction, Best Narrative, and Best Art Direction, all 3 in a row, right before Game of the Year, before Baldur's Gate came and won it. So it doesn't mean there's a guarantee, right. But hey, if Black Myth Wukong gets these other 2, you still gotta consider like, oh, maybe. But yeah, I'm gonna go back Black Myth Wukong. I believe in the fans, in the hype.
All right. Next up, Best Narrative. So this is the story of the video game, and I think there are some heavy hitters here. I'm curious what you think is gonna win.
I don't think it's Final Fantasy VII because in a way I know the first remake had elements that were different and whatnot, but the general narrative for the most part is similar, right? So you're not reinventing the wheel necessarily, right? So I think, and this is once again a sequel. I keep saying that the sequels get less stock unless they really exceed expectations. So I don't think it's Final Fantasy VII. I don't know much about Like a Dragon, but we haven't seen much of these I think it was nominated for another award, so maybe that one sneaks in.
RPG.
But everything you've said about Metaphor makes me think it's that one. And then Silent Hill 2 would be interesting, but I think once again it's a kind of remake, so the narrative isn't changing, so you're not doing something new. I think for me, what I would like to see from a best narrative is it's something new. So to me, I wish there wasn't remakes in here because at least um, we're getting new ideas. And Hellblade 2, I think, like with what you said, I think it came and went. Whether it was great or not, I just don't think that will help them in this category. I'm going to go Metaphor on this one.
Okay. I will say I think it is easily Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as a prediction to win. I think, first off, what you're saying about the sequel, I think is actually doubly true for Rebirth, because when the remake came out in 2020, end of a console generation, it sold ridiculously well. It is, oh my god, they're actually doing the thing. They're remaking Final Fantasy VII, and that hype extended beyond the barriers of hardcore gamers either, because if you remember, back in the day, Final Fantasy VII was like the biggest mainstream game possible at this time of release. That was the game people talked about. It was a huge event. And so there's a nostalgia for it back then in 2020. And I think for the most part, Rebirth has just talked exactly to its own fans. It didn't reach out beyond it because, well, we already got the thing. You know what I mean? Like, we already got the thing. And for the most part, Final Fantasy VII, I think a lot of those people didn't play beyond what Remake covers anyway, to appreciate what Rebirth would be covering. I don't know what to tell people at home where I'm at. There is the first open. So there's the flashback, which is in a not short segment. Then there's the first open area thing. Then there is a cave which is basically a dungeon, which I would describe, because I know you didn't get there. It was like basically an entire chapter from what Remake would have done, where it is a linear, heavily story-based set pieces of action and climactic boss fights. That's what this cave dungeon felt like. And then now it's another open area, and I see a big city, and I'm avoiding going in there because I want to get all the other things, because I know once I get in the city, I know what happens in the story, and I'm not going to want to like not pursue that and take a break. So that's where I stopped. So I do not know what happens afterwards. Legitimately do not know, and I don't want to know until I eventually play it. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be doing wacky, crazy stuff that is not in the original. And I think that is going to be polarizing, or has been polarizing to fans. And inevitably, though, it is a very famous story. It is a very famous cast, because this is narrative. I know this is literally on narrative, but we're also bringing in characters. The cast of Final Fantasy VII is more than beloved. It is video games' Star Wars cast. Like, these characters are untouchable in terms of like how held precious they are in like the video game industry. And I think people would, if they were to look at these 5 games, they'd be like, yeah, man, I love Ichiban and Kiryu and Yakuza, and Metaphor is awesome, and yeah, there was Hellblade, and Silent Hill 2 is a magnificent, legendary game. This is being retold. But I mean, come on, man. It's Cloud, it's Tifa, you got Barrett, and you get the journey that they're going on. I think that is just what will be the driving force on the vote. So I think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is going to win.
All right, our second to last one. Some say just as important as Game of the Year. Just kidding, no one says that. But best game direction, and now we're back to 6 games again. So yeah, we have best game direction.
So best game direction sounds to a layman like, what's the best game? Because this is like, what's the best game? You know what I mean? It's devoid of narrative, devoid of music, devoid of art, but at the same time, to people, all of it. So I think this is a wishy-washy term. Obviously, here on the Game Awards' own site, it says awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. So ultimately, we're talking about the actual gameplay itself, the game that you're playing. I don't think that this is an anybody's game thing. I think Astrobot will be looked on pleasantly. I think Balatro will be considered extremely smart and creative how it works. And there was the tweet that the sole independent developer of the game put out that like, yeah, my code is literally like 1,000 nested if else statements. It is the sloppiest code, but it's also extremely efficient. And I would get shot on the streets if in game design class if I had this. But screw you, this is what worked for me. And I think like those kinds of stories eke out into, especially in the kinds of people that vote on this stuff, of appreciation of like, man, Balatro is a very smartly handled game and how it handles its systems. And maybe people hear about a little bit how it works. Black Myth Wukong is this huge production of a video game that is extremely impressive, that a new kind of studio in a country that doesn't have as many types of studios. You don't have a lot of peers that you can hire and gain like actual like industry experience from, to learn from, if you only speak Chinese perhaps, you know what I mean. I don't think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Metaphor will get it. They are very traditional seeming JRPGs. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth plays like Remake. It is not new in that sense. Metaphor plays like other Atlas RPGs, Persona, Shin Megami Tensei. It's funny, but I think this is the one that is probably going to Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, because I think boss design carries a lot of weight in people's mind, and the world and bosses in Erdtree have had nothing but praise lauded onto them from people that have played it. And I think that is what people are be like, oh my god, do you remember when blah 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 happened and this boss fight, man? Like, I know they had to patch the final boss to make him extremely easy because he was way too hard. Like that type of thing. But I'm curious, do you think it's going to be Erdtree or do you think it's going to be something else?
I think, and this is only depending on, like, if this is different, I think, then the other one wins Game of the Year.
Okay, you think whatever wins this is not the Game of the Year winner?
Right, but I'm only picking two out of here, and it's Balatro and Astrobot. I think these are the two real. I think this is the real two-headed race in this. This is the. Everyone else is a third party. All right.
Okay.
And that's how
literally
I look at
red
this.
Versus blue in terms of the images that they have here.
Yeah. Yes. So to me, I think if I'm putting, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put money on this, but if I had to, I'd pick Balatro to win this only because of to me, like, game direction, is like, what is your goal of the game? Like, what are you trying to make the players do? How are you trying to immerse them? And for me, I think Balatro is like a one of a kind idea, and has, obviously it gets people to stop, like you said earlier, for when it came on mobile, like, I stopped going to work, I'm playing Balatro.
Right.
That means that, like, you get invested in the game, you don't even know how much time has passed, you're playing the game. And art, game direction also includes, to me, art direction and it's all those things. That's why I feel like, I joked about, it's just as important as Game of the Year, because in a way it's like game direction is your first step before you decide all these other things.
Right.
Okay, what's the end goal of this game? What do I want people to enjoy of this game? That's what best game direction means, to me. I know they have their own definition there too.
If I can interject, they used to have an award that was like best like studio, and I feel like that signified like the actual directorial like design sense a lot more than this one does. Where you're saying, someone can read this and be like, "Oh, what was the best game?" Because that's what these are. They're games.
Yeah, and then, like, there's a direction to it, right? There's like, what was our intent, and did we accomplish that? Balatro is like a poker style game with roguelike elements to it, right? So like that's what his goal was, and it did that. Astrobot is in a way, Sony's like Super Mario World in a way, but using their controller. They wanted to really focus on the controller and make stuff for that to show it off, what it can do, and and it's a really beautiful looking game and whatnot too, right? So to me, like it's between those two. I think Black Myth Wukong is probably the next one up for me, and then maybe Elden Ring, and then the other two it doesn't really matter. Um, like I think whatever one of these two will win game of the year. If it all of a sudden is Black Myth Wukong, then I'm like, then I don't know. I don't know who's gonna win game of the year because then I'm like maybe Black Myth Wukong actually has a real shot at winning this. I think I still has a good shot, but I don't. I like I said, I wouldn't be surprised. But I still think it's like third. I think it's third on the potential. I'm
Okay.
gonna say Balatro. And that's because I think game of the year. I don't, we'll talk about it, but I think game of the year will be Astrobot. But if it is the other way around,
Mm.
then I can see Balatro being game of the year. I think best game direction sometimes is a hint. I have no like history or whatnot to back this up. I'm just going off vibes. I'm just going off
Right,
vibes,
right,
folks.
right, right.
I just have a feeling for this one go around, just and based off all the other award nominees we've seen. If Balatro is getting these other ones and also gets game direction, I think we'll see Astrobot maybe getting it because Astrobot I think will win the other awards too. But I think game direction is like the real first. It's like the primary before the election, the real
Sure,
election
sure,
kind of. That's what
sure.
kind of feels
It's
like
the
where it's like,
playoffs.
yeah. So
Okay.
I don't
Well, why
know.
don't we
I don't
talk
know. This
about
is
game
just
of the year
vibes.
because you've already basically said what you think is going to be the game of the year. So we have the same six games up for game of the year. Who do you think is going to win, Devin?
I think it's Astrobot. I typically the ones that win game of the year are unfortunately the bigger name studios who have the money to put into these games and make them. That's why Last of Us will always win. There hasn't been like to me like a big like oh my god surprise for the game of the year in the last couple of years. Like Baldur's Gate, I guess was kind of surprising, but it also was like yeah I could see it. There was no one that was like an indie game to me like Balatro like is a great success story, but will that carry them all the way to game of the year? I don't know. It really depends to me on who wins best game direction, like I said, because I think if Astrobot gets best game direction, I think people are like, I wanted to give you game of the year, Astrobot, but I gotta give it to Balatro, and other way around. I could just see that like it being really really close, and that's why you'll have that flip potentially. Um, I think it's really like I said, I think it's a really close race, but maybe Balatro and Astrobot split too much votes, and then Black Myth Wukong comes in to win it. That's the only thing. I don't believe in. I think that the Shadow of the Erd Tree is too divisive. Of like, should it even be in there to win it? And then Final Fantasy VII, like I said, I think is hype, but I think it's just going to pull votes from things like Black Myth Wukong potentially. And then Metaphor, from how you described it, I didn't know too much about it, but I don't think it's one of those games that's I haven't heard anyone talk about it until we started looking at this. So to me,
Oh,
I also just go
interesting.
off that everyone's talked about Balatro and Astrobot. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
So at
Okay.
least from everything I've seen. So I'm just gonna lock it into Astrobot, but it would not surprise me if it's Balatro, and then maybe there's a chance too of Black Myth Wukong, depending on how the rest of the night goes.
Interesting. Um. Okay. Here's
I know
my
I really kind of cheated there by 3 out of 6 of these might win,
well. My
but
three is similar but not the same. Um. I will say this: I have seen extreme hype for all six of these games throughout the year. I'm actually surprised Helldivers 2 isn't up here. I would probably, and this is going to sound sacrilegious, I would think Helldivers 2 would replace Astrobot on this list. I don't think Astrobot is
wow,
is a winner at all. Part of that is
interesting.
1.5 million copies sold. I think that was extremely hype for the PlayStation crowd, and it is all six of these games. I mean, I didn't play Black Myth Wukong, Metaphor Read Fantasio, or the Erdtree DLC. All six of these games deserve to win for sure. If I were to rank them on which I think they won't show this, what I think would be it, I think it would go Metaphor and Final Fantasy just barely getting higher than Metaphor. I think then Astrobot, then Black Myth, then Erdtree, and Balatro is going to sweep this. Now, I have two things to say. This is called Game of the Year. What they mean is this is the best game that released this year.
Yeah,
Balatro is the game this year wouldn't shut up about. This was the biggest game of the year by far for everyone. Erdtree was huge. Black Myth Wukong, huge. Balatro, huge-er. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Metaphor, huge to a specific audience. Astrobot, huge to a smaller audience, believe it or not.
That's fair. That's fair.
However, if we look at the title, Game of the Year, what I think is way more important of a category, and one that the Game Awards wouldn't do because it's more about the industry. What is the game that defined 2024 video game industry the most? What game defined 2024's video game industry the most? It's Concord. And I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Sony spent over $250 million on a game and a studio. They launched it with no fanfare and took it down 12 days later, shut the studio down, refunded everyone, and yanked it off of their store completely, out of people's downloads list even. It's gone. That was the biggest fumble, I think, maybe of the decade so far in terms of video games. And the Keeleys would never want to, like, acknowledge, like, the industry's fucked. But Concord, to me, is the biggest example that the industry is fucked. And, like, when people... Because I've seen on Twitter... and, like, yes, this was voted on. Jeff Keighley didn't handpick 6 games here. But people are like, oh, look, just like every year, there's one indie game and then the 6 big AAA Ultra games. But, like, guess what? These were the 6 only good ones. But only the 5 only good ones, like AAA games that released this year, like of the quality that the industry wants to have. The only 5, like we can barely get to this many. So like, yes, of course we need an indie game to get in here because we can't fit it if we were in that mindset. But putting all that aside, Balatro just simply is the best game of the year. It might be the best game of next year and the year after that, because guess what? They're going to be doing DLC themselves, and if Erdtree is eligible, then Balatro's expansion is also going to be up there as well. It is just a brilliantly designed game. It is a brilliantly designed game.
Yeah, and now that you said that too, I definitely agree that like this year is definitely to me like the indies fight back. Maybe not direct, like they're not purposely doing it, but like I think you're right where people are starting to be like, what are we doing? Like why are we spending $250 million on a hero shooter when Overwatch 2 has been low key like failing? Maybe that's just our personal bias, but like I feel like no one talks about Overwatch. The fact that they had to bring back over the OG Overwatch tells you something.
Well, only for 3 weeks, because we don't want you to like that more than the actual game we make.
Right. But, and obviously Call of Duty will still always have its footing and the NBA 2K games and whatnot. But I feel like more and more people are giving these indie games a shot, and it would be kind of... I am cheering for Balatro. I'll say that much. I'll say I want Balatro because... I like it when one guy makes something and he wins it all kind of thing. I think that's cool. We should be rewarding people. We should, in a world where there is so much money and acquisitions of these studios and whatnot, I think that's really bad and awful and is only going to hurt creativity and how much time is being spent into certain projects. They should be rewarding that. But I don't know, man. Then the Jeff Keighley corporate game awards starts to kick in the back of my brain. It's just like, who wins these awards, man? At the end of the day, it's like
From Software, Hideo Kojima, and PlayStation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So like, if it's Astrobot, we shouldn't be also surprised just because. I'm not saying that there's a corporate influence being like, you better change those votes.
I don't think there's a hand on the scale either. Yeah.
No. But I think journalists, but I think a lot of the game journalists who are voting on this just have a habit of voting for, Balatro is great. It's like Vampire Survivor. Vampire so great. Great
game. Both of those games can melt a 6-hour plane flight. But they don't have a 7 million polygon Monkey King. You know what I mean? And the greatest graphics ever. And it doesn't have like... You know what I mean? Like it
doesn't have the narrative of the acting
Balatro
and all that
has
stuff.
One song. Final Fantasy, you know what I mean? As a million people, and it's fair. It's 100% fair to be like, but look at how much work they did for Black Myth Wukong. That's 100% fair. I don't think that much work should be put into video games anymore. If it takes this long to make them,
Unless you're
personally.
giving him, unless it's taking 10 years and everyone's getting good working hours and
But
great
here's the
pay
thing:
and all
I would
that. But
rather they
why?
make
But
a
why?
game every single year because that's how you get experience and grow as a career, as an
But you're
individual.
and make it be
That's a
cheaper and yeah. And
yeah.
I'm just saying if you're gonna do all that effort, at least just take might as well do it for 10 years. Take your time
Right,
and
right.
really make it
I
right.
mean
Not
that.
saying
Hey,
Black
that's what
Myth
UFO
Wukong's bad,
50
but
would be then, because that was the 7 year
right.
project. Yeah, like no, like at the same time, like I don't care how beautiful Black Myth Wukong is, how maybe fine tuned like its combat is and its story and all that. Balatro was just the best game I played this year. I shouldn't be saying that when I had this realization because like I'm making my top 10 list for my favorite games that came out this year, and I played more than 10 this year, which is not the case for last year. And I'm like, man, why didn't I just keep playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? And it dawned on me, Balatro came out. I stopped a game that should be my game of the year because Balatro came out and said, no, you are only playing this. And then Animal Well came out and now they were challenging. By the way, personally, I don't think Shadow of the Erdtree should be on here, and I think Animal Well should be on here instead. Because I think a lot of people were lauding that game as well, but that's neither here nor there. That's just my opinion.
I just wanted to say to kind of like finish this kind of like because what we're getting at right is that like here's what we're picking, but it also can be these things because of these scenarios, and I think it's important to say that because I like you kind of said the industry is kind of fucked right now where you have all these studios buying each other up and trying to make the biggest game that's going to take 5 years to make, but it's going to be this, and this. Like, in Last of Us, maybe to a degree, and maybe Uncharted, all those are to blame to a certain degree of like, hey, no, we need to make games that are experiences and whatnot. But to me, at the end of the day, like I don't play many games anymore because like I like the experiences, but I feel like I need to spend 50 hours or I need to chunk out time. I need to be playing it in the dark to like, get the full movie like experience, right? When at the end of the day, video games were made to just be fun and enjoyment. So to me, like maybe we need the industry needs to shift back to that. Like Helldivers 2 was just fun.
Yeah,
like
I would
yes,
say
there was the lore and stuff, but like from what I haven't played Blattra, but from what you're describing, to me it's how you kind of described. Not obviously not verbatim, but like, hey, just check out this game called Vampire Survivor. It's just stupid fun. I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I'm like, I play that now on every flight because I'm just looking to just not think about it too deeply sometimes. And I think, like, yes, I'm sure Black Myth Wukong is, great narrative, story, whatever. I'm sure it is. But maybe we need something different.
Yeah.
We need to go back to games can make gaming fun again.
We need to go back to the PlayStation 2, and I'm not joking. You used to be able to make a game, it could sell less than 100,000 copies in Japan alone, and that would be more than successful enough. It is insane that
and it's a 10-hour game where like you do some goofy shit and whatever. Like
exactly. I will just say, like what you're saying about Helldivers 2, that should also be up here. That 100%. Astrobot and Balatro are not long. They get their point across right away, and you don't feel like you don't have this like, oh, I gotta keep playing this. Like, I felt horrible for not jumping back into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth immediately. I would feel horrible about Black Myth Wukong. I would definitely feel horrible about Metaphor ReFantasio. These are just long, big, beautiful games. And I feel like I'm letting myself down by not playing through it, normally. But and I think maybe a lot of people are like this. This is just my, statistics on achievements and whatnot show this. Most people do not ever even get close to finishing these games. Maybe a third of the way through for some of these big games is like where the huge falling off point is. And so guess what? That doesn't happen with Balatro. Everyone plays Balatro and loves Balatro. It was the game that
guess
broke
what? You
Apple.
Don't feel guilty. You don't feel guilty too for like, oh, I don't like. I'm not. I come back to the game whenever I want to, or I don't come back at all, and I'm satisfied enough. Like you said, I'm afraid to jump into these bigger games because I'm like, I know I'm not gonna have the time, or it's gonna take me a year to beat it, and then it just doesn't hit the same because it took me a year to beat the game because I don't have
it came out, that's
120 hours.
$70 you spent on it too, which also hurts more of like that's where you're playing your hand
Yep.
of like should I I mean Balatro is like $10 on a phone. It is
Vampire Survivors still is like,
5.
and sometimes it's on sale
I
somehow,
think it's
and it's
always on
$2.
sale. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Man.
it's more expensive to get a burger, like McDonald's or whatever
Right,
now. You know what I
right.
mean? Like, you can get Balatro for cheaper.
Absolutely. Well, man, that was Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Now, we have one more question we need to ask ourselves, and that is, what games do we think are going to get announced at the Game Awards? Haha, too fast! You'll have to click a link somewhere that leads
Or
to a live stream that
description, I don't know.
we're gonna stream our reactions to it live, and you're gonna watch, and then we have our whole thing we're gonna do there. We're not gonna spoil them today because I don't think either of us have actually.
I'm not prepared.
Yeah,
Not
I didn't write
prepared.
them down. But we're gonna do our whole predictions thing in the stream that leads into the Game Awards itself. So please check that out. Please like and subscribe. It saves our lives. Devon has 8 kids. He used to have 11.
And counting.
You're counting down because you don't have the money. Like and subscribe. I have no kids, and I don't have that problem. Yes, thank you, and goodbye.